Her Journey to Healing, Reaching Women with a Desperate Cry is an 8-week Zoom seminar in which Kamala and Winston help women to start living their best life by rediscovering the image of God in their life. Kamala, a licensed marriage and family therapist, joins her husband of 16 years, an ordained pastor, to marry the clinical and the spiritual. You will begin living your best life filled with love, joy, and peace. Register at kwministries.net for this life-changing seminar.
So anxious resistant. So remember there were 4 categories, right? So anxious resistant kids were on the opposite end of the spectrum. They didn't have a lot of self-confidence. They really clung to their caregivers, whether it's parents. When I say caregivers, I mean parents, grandparents, just old people in their lives who were, really part of that initial bonding experience. For these kids, they tended to have really exaggerated emotional reactions to stuff, but they also kept the distance from their peers. How did this translate into adulthood? That translated into anxious, preoccupied adults. And so they kind of formed less secure bonds with partners and feel really desperate for love and affection.
God is patient. God is kind. God is long-suffering. God never fails. God always hopes. God always trusts. God always perseveres. God doesn't envy. God doesn't boast. God doesn't seek his own, but is always seeking what's best for you. God rejoices in the truth.
That's right.
God doesn't define love. God demonstrates love. Good evening. There's a camera. Good evening. Welcome to Monday Night Live with KW. Because if it's Monday night,
You are live with KW.
how was your day?
I'm going to go with fantastic because language creates reality. And so if I speak it, therefore it is.
If you speak it, therefore it is.
Mhm.
What was so fantastic about today for you?
Well,
What are you celebrating? What are you
I
thankful
am
for?
celebrating the completion of another big project. I feel like I'm celebrating that every Monday these days. But
Because you went into work yesterday.
I did, and I got a really big project down to the final pieces today, and I'm very excited about that. So feels really accomplished.
I'm excited for you. I'm celebrating two young ladies that we had dinner with this evening, Miss Sierra and Miss Day.
Yes.
They are two unapologetically spiritual
Yes.
young people.
That was a really great conversation and just experience.
And
So
just
we're not
watching
looking
them talk to each other
Yeah.
was just an amazing experience. So I'm celebrating that. I'm
Yeah.
celebrating that. What are you celebrating this evening? Would you please share with us in the commentary? Let us know what you're thankful for. Let us know what you're grateful for.
And if you're joining us for the first time, and I've tried to say this from week to week, because usually when we're talking about Mondays is typically that day that we're like, oh, we went back to work today.
Monday.
It's the Monday blues. It's the Mondays. That's how we talk about it. But we're trying to reinvent Mondays by having an attitude of gratitude. So tell us what you're grateful for today.
That's right. That's right. And if we can develop an attitude of gratitude, then we can. That will actually help us to experience better, because then we're looking for things to be grateful for.
Yes, it will.
Wasn't that so? There's another thing, Kamala, and we've been saying this for a while, but we're going to be having a third hosts.
Yeah. I honestly cannot wait for that. Pastor Jimmy Gibson.
Yes.
Is going to be joining us, and he is such just a dynamic person. You will get to see, so personable, so just he'll be a great addition, I think.
Yes. We've been talking about it for a while. Hasn't quite happened yet, but we're gonna make it happen.
Yes.
And Pastor Gibson is gonna be our third host on Monday nights when he's available, and so we're grateful for that. I'm looking forward to that.
And just in case you're watching Pastor G, you know how they like to say no pressure, totally pressure. Yes, we can't wait to see.
Yes, you have to make our program better. You do. Does you have to help yourself books too?
You know what? Why not?
Why not?
Let's all do
That's what we're doing.
And so, good segue.
Yes, ma'am.
So
I tried.
I want to remind you guys who are watching, whether you are on Facebook Live or you are on YouTube, let me tell you something really snazzy. If you navigate over to www.kwministries.net/shop, guess what? You won't miss anything that we're saying because we are broadcasting there too. And while you're in there, what you'll be able to do is go shopping. And who doesn't love that little dopamine rush you get from just clicking that buy button?
Hey, we're not encouraging that though, Kamala.
In this case, we are, because the products that you're gonna buy
that's true.
are going to be things that are gonna enrich your life. Check out our
devotional and are going to tell
series.
You not to feed off that dopamine rush.
Absolutely, but check out our devotional series. Hey man, you messed up my sales.
I know.
Gosh, somebody's got to do the sale. So check out our devotional series. Check out A Journey to Healing. Ariana's book is so good. We haven't really talked about that in a little while, but our daughter, she has a diagnosis of Crohn's.
I was talking about her last night, and I was showing the picture to some folk.
But she has a diagnosis of Crohn's. Those of you who don't know, that's like an autoimmune chronic condition, something she's going to have for the rest of her life. So that's a pretty impactful
Unless God heals her.
Right.
Which we're praying,
Right. And God can do whatever he's going to do. Either way, he's going to get the glory.
That's right.
But as a 15-year-old, that's a tough thing to kind of navigate. And so she wrote a book about that.
I was 13 when she did it.
Yep. And so we want to encourage you to check that book out. It's one of many things that are in our store that we feel could be a real inspiration to your life. And let's say you're like, I don't really need it. That doesn't mean that somebody in your life doesn't. So we want to encourage you to go in
And the title of her book is Reaching A Journey to Healing, Reaching Children with a Desperate Cry. And she shares her story. My favorite line is when she says, "Brah, what you worried about? It's not, tomorrow is not even here yet."
Yeah,
and she's quoting God. So we're excited about that. So we'd love for you to check that out. Yeah. Kamala, real quick before we introduce our guests. So what is it that we're doing here? I know we're offering our products and stuff, but outside of that, what are we doing here?
We're talking to people about their lives. If there's one thing that we can all collectively, it's one thing that we collectively share. It's life experiences. And while we collectively share that, each of our experiences have such a unique flavor to them. So we talk with people about just their life experiences, the things that drive them, the things that are going well, the things that they've learned, the things that they want to share from their own journeys, sometimes of healing, sometimes their journeys of just education, all of it. But, something that I think has stood out to me, and I know those of you who have been following along with us a lot, you've heard me say this before, but in each of these stories, in each of these lived experiences, in each of these journeys, every single person has highlighted in some way, shape, or form the importance of having people in their lives.
The need of the other. We need each other. I want to ask you one last question. Why is vulnerability so important?
I don't think you can do life in a real way unless you give yourself opportunities to be vulnerable. And what I mean by that is this. Not being vulnerable about our experiences means that there's parts of ourselves that we are always holding on to, parts of ourselves that are always hidden. And the trouble with that is that not only do we hide those parts from the outside, we end up hiding those parts from ourselves.
And so we don't really get to experience the abundance that life has to offer.
Yeah.
I know you built that safe space for yourself. I know that safe space protects you. I know that. But you're not enjoying life. You're not as much as you could if you would be vulnerable.
Life comes with risk. Vulnerability requires risk, but it's worth it.
It's worth it. Good evening, Father. How are you doing? How is Atlanta? We're so happy that you decided to join us. Please share with us, Brother Glenn, what are you celebrating? I am super excited this evening. Well, before I say that, our original guest this evening was to be Dr. Bolgen. Dr. Bolgen recently buried his father, and he just gone back home from the funeral. We reached out to him. We talked some. And Dr. Bolgen, you're probably not watching, but if you are, just know that Kamal and I are concerned about your pain. And we know that healing will come, but don't rush it. Go through the process. Live your experience. Celebrate the memories of the man that made you who you are today. We grieve with you. All right. I am excited to introduce one of my favorite, she's become one of my favorite persons in this district. Elder LaSunya Phillips is an educator. She's a former military person, a former military spouse. She has an adult child who is doing exceptionally well. And I'm going to let me bring her in. And then when I bring her in, I'll introduce her some more. Yeah. So I'm really excited, really excited to have Elder LaSunya Phillips in with us tonight. Hey, Elder, how are you doing?
Good evening. Glad to be here.
Oh, man, that mic sounds good. That sounds good. We're so excited to have you. And I wanted you to come in so I could introduce you the way I want to introduce you. I fell in love with this woman because I sat in her parents' living room. I went to visit with them, and they spent the 3 hours that I was to visit with them talking about her. She did. And I mean, they told me stories from her childhood. But the most impressive thing that I heard them say was, "Oh, she loves us." And they told me how on every weekend she comes over with dinner, and how caring she is. And I mean, they're just so proud of you. They love you so much. And I felt on that day that I got to know you. I got to know Brandon. I got to know your family. I mean, it was an amazing experience listening to your mom and your dad talk about you. And so as we pivot to doing more local interviews, more local conversations, Kamal and I are super excited that we get to start with you, Elder Phillips. How are you doing, and what are you celebrating on today?
I am well, and I am celebrating that I made it through my first day of work, and my summer has come to a close, but I'm excited to see the little people coming back to school in a few weeks. So I'm celebrating a new school year.
Wow, man, way to jump right into it. So school, so your today was your first day back at work.
Today was my first day back.
Wow, how was it?
It was exciting, but it'll get a little bit more exciting once the little people start coming through and we get to see these smiling faces and interacting with the parents and the teachers and all of that stuff.
Right. All right.
You know, I just want to note, Elder Phillips, as you are sharing that, I want for somebody who's listening to really just listen to what Elder Phillips just said. Did you hear the excitement in her voice? Did you hear her passion for what she does?
Yes.
To me, that's what separates an educator from somebody who goes to school to get a paycheck.
Yes.
And this is part of the reason why I'm so excited about this conversation in particular tonight, because I know that she has that passion.
Where did it come from?
Well, I'll say when I was finishing my grad school degree, my degree is actually in criminology undergrad with a specialization in social services. And my grad degree is in criminal justice. And one day I was doing an internship with the Commonwealth Department of Corrections. And I met a young man that was probably about 19 or 20. He graduated from high school when he just gone into the Navy, had a bright future ahead of him, and he made one bad mistake, and it cost him his freedom and his career. And that's one. And another one that I'm really passionate about is I used to work in a high school setting in the same area. And there was a young man, which we have several students that are so needy, but they come to school anyway. Sometimes they get in trouble to act out of their frustrations. Some of them are in gangs, and that's the only love and family that they have. Parents aren't concerned about their well-being, what they're doing in school, if they're passing or what have you. But we had a young man that came to class one day, and it was in the winter. He was soaking wet, quiet little guy, didn't cause any problems. And he was wearing the same clothing that he had on the day before. So I pulled the young man outside the door and I spoke to him and I said, "Hey, what's going on? What's the deal here this morning?" And he told me, he said, Miss White Phillips, my mom and I got into an argument, and she told me to get out of her house. I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I just laid beside the bottom of the trailer house that night until it was time for me to come to school. Now that has probably been about 20 some years ago, but it's stuck in my head. And then I've also had the privilege of mentoring high school students here at one of the local high schools. And just to hear their stories, to see why they're doing what they're doing, making the choices that they make, or they just may be a child that's not a problem child. They just don't have an interest in doing their work because they don't feel like anybody cares.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing how if you show these kids a little bit of hope and let them show them that you really do care about them, and you can see the progress that they make from 1 week to the next week to the next month to the semester, all the way until the end of the year. And then when they come see you 3 years later and they're ready to graduate, you just want to hug them, and tell them to see, we've made it through.
Yeah, yeah. Man, how did you get into the field to even be able to share those stories with us, the things that really have propelled you to continue? How did you get into the field?
It probably started, I kind of liked it a little bit when I was in college, shortly after I got out of high school. And I believe after I got out of the military, I started doing substitute teaching. And I used to kind of gravitate to the students. This was an elementary school. So I would gravitate to the students that like to, show out in the class and required a lot of attention. And I would get with them a lot and try to spend more time with them. And we got to be real good friends. So that's how I got into the educational sector, and I've been there ever since.
Wow. So you've had a lot of experiences with students, parents, the whole process of being embedded in that system. And for somebody who has such a passion for it, there's probably so much that you have gleaned over your years of experience. So let's see, where do we want to start? We're getting ready to head into a new school year.
Right.
How does what would you say, best practices for students getting ready? Let's start with students getting ready to come back in. What are some ways that you would advise students to really approach this return?
Well, students are never ready to end their summer. So I would say the best thing to do with the students would be to start off by getting them acclimated to their school regiment, their school hours, getting to bed on time, helping them to feel a little excited about the new school year. When you get new school clothes and, a new backpack and all this new stuff, then you're ready to go, off to school, meet your friends and catch up over the summer. So that would be the best jump start. And also, if you have students that are transitioning from elementary school, going to the 6th grade, or if you have them transitioning from middle school, going to the 9th grade, some schools offer something that's called a school camp, if you will, like a Spartans camp or a Gator camp. And it's designed to help those students that are transitioning from elementary school to middle school, or the group that's transitioning from middle school to high school. That is something that I highly recommend. It is usually about 2 hours the weekend or that Thursday or Friday before those students start school. It affords them an opportunity to meet their peers. If they're coming in from a new school or across the city, or we're a military area here, if they're transitioning from another state or something, this will kind of break the ice and help them to feel comfortable. So it allows them to meet other students their age, and some of those friends they will have classes with. It allows them to see what extracurricular activities that they may be interested in, that, join clubs. I recommend that as well. It'll also afford them an opportunity to meet their teachers, and they can walk around the building and kind of get acclimated to, where is, the restroom, or where's my classroom, or what direction. Excuse me. So when they go on that first day, when the other 1,000 students come in,
Yeah.
it won't be such a anxiety on their end to going to school. They'll feel comfortable. They'll know that they've met some friends and they have something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives them a glimpse of what is yet to come.
Yeah. I'm hearing in what you're saying a lot of the idea of preparation.
Yes.
And you've talked a lot about that transition for those who are transitioning maybe from a different place, or they're transitioning to a higher level. But you also said something about that preparation in terms of, for those who are not maybe making those transitions, but they're the ones that now the transition is from summer back into school. Tell
Right.
me a little bit more about your thought process as to why it's so important to put that routine back in place prior to getting ready to start school.
Well, I'd say about a week or two, depending on your child, is a good time to kind of get their mindset in tune to, okay, I've had a couple of months to kind of enjoy myself and not have to obligate myself. But now I have to get prepared to start making good grades and preparing myself for college or the workforce. So that starts, today. So I need to make sure that my mind is set and ready for this, so that way it helps out the parents as well, because you don't have to battle with them as much, because you've already gotten them, the mindset ready for school.
Yeah. So I'm sure that these ideas about preparation and transitions and, thinking about all of these things, they didn't just come up for you, over the space of the last 5 minutes we were talking about it. You developed these ideas over time. So
Right.
tell me a little bit about what are the things that you think contributed to your being in a place now where that's the kind of advice you would give to students who are making those transitions? What have you seen over the years that tells you that this is best practice?
Well, it's real simple. It determines whether your student will succeed this school year. It's just that simple.
Just that simple.
Mhm.
Would you say that it reflects a little bit of your own experiences in your personal life as you made these transitions in your educational growth? Would you say that was something that you learned and saw play out in your own experience?
Well, I would say mostly a little bit with my son, Brandon, but where it really kind of tipped over for me was working in the school system and seeing the successful students versus the students that just they're not motivated to go to school because they haven't been pushed to go to school, and they haven't had, their parents to get them excited about, why you go to school. You go to school to learn, but you also go to, enjoy yourself and have some downtime. But most importantly, you're preparing for your future. So that's the difference between the two groups, whether they succeed or whether they fail.
Yeah. I got a tough question in mind. I saw where Day signed on. Hey, Day, thanks for checking in and commenting, letting us know that you're there. I think about those students who have challenges at home, or there's, economic factors, psychosocial factors, things that impede their ability to do this preparation that you're talking about. How can we help those students, those who don't have that familial push to say, hey, let's get back into the routine, let's get you prepared for school?
Sometimes you can reach out to their teachers, and you can kind of find out who they kind of bond with. You can sometimes pair the students with another student that might be similar in personality, or maybe just a little bit more outgoing than that student. And that, once they find that one person that they can kind of bond with, that changes things for them as well. Now, when you're dealing with a student that's maybe disadvantaged or what have you, usually what happens is, say, for example, I worked at a high school, and the ninth graders, around October, the teachers will give a list to the counselors of the failing students. And then we'll get the counselors will share that, the ninth grade counselor will share that list to the whole school and ask you if you are interested in mentoring a student. And I usually get I would usually get two students. And I would call those students every so often, usually the worst time for them, which was the best time for me, was during their PE time, because of course I didn't want to take away from their core classes.
Right.
And I would chat with them and just kind of find out, I'm like, hey, what's going on? Why do your grades look like this? I pull their grades and we'll go over it, and they'll, I just don't do my homework, or I don't feel like doing it, or whatever the case may be, or I don't have supplies, I need this. I said, oh, you don't have supplies? Tell me what you need. And I'll have that for you.
Yeah.
We're going to come up with a solution.
Okay. What kind of resources do students have available to them that they might not readily know about?
Okay. Most of the times, teachers, they will help those students if they need extra help, but they have to say it. I haven't worked in a middle school sector, but I do know on a high school sector, all they have to do is email their teacher most of the time and say, hey, I'm not getting this. I'm not grasping this. Can I come before school and meet with you and we go over this? That usually works. Can I stay after school? Make an arrangement with them. And it works in elementary school as well. They do have elementary schools have remedial programs to prepare the students for their end of the year testing. I think last year we started around November or January timeframe, and the kids stay after school for about an hour or two. They get snacks, and then the teachers reinforce some of those lessons with them.
That's really helpful to know, because I know we've probably got parents on who, they may even be in that mode where they don't know what resources are available, and they don't know who to ask, how to ask these questions.
Well, here in Caddo Parish, we have this wonderful thing called the Parent Resource Center. And they can go online and access it, but it gives a lot of help for the parents to be able to help their students. They have interactive games pertaining to math, social studies, science, language art, sight words that our pre-K and kindergartners should know. They have all of this wonderful material right at their fingertips.
Yeah.
And also, the Parent Resource Center offers information. We have homeless children, and if they need to waiver some of the school fees or what have you. So there's a wealth of information on our Teacher Resource Center. So just check your districts, ask some questions. Someone should be able to direct you in the right direction to get help for your child.
Yeah. So we're still kind of talking about, started off talking about the transition, getting prepped. We talked about our students getting prepped. How can our parents get prepped?
I am glad you asked this. I am all about parents being actively engaged in their students' education. You can't just sit and wait for some grades to come home after the teacher has given your child whatever grade less than what you feel they should have. Here in Caddo Parish, we have something called J Campus.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents can log on to establish their account and log on to J Campus. When my child was in school, I was on J Campus probably about 5 or 6 times a day, keeping track of the grades. If it's some zeros in there, I need to know why you have a zero, because 1 or 2 zeros, depending on the weight of that assignment, it can drop an A down to a C. So just imagine if you have 2 or 3 zeros in a 9 weeks, which carries over into your semester grade if you're in high school, then you're in bad shape. So we want, I'm pushing this all the time. Parents, stay actively engaged in your students' education. There's no reason for parents to be surprised when the progress reports come out and when the report cards come out. If you're surprised, then you have failed your student.
So I'm gonna play a devil's advocate here, and I'm gonna use a story for it. So I remember I was talking to our producer Anna Kay one day. Actually, we were having a conversation. She was telling me that she was watching something. I think it was an interview with this actress Viola Davis, and she was talking about the raising of her kids and her and her husband, and the fact that education has moved so far ahead that she's like, I can't be the one to help my kid. Like, I don't know. I need to have a tutor for that. That's what she was saying. But I find, and I think that you probably will agree with that, we have a lot of parents who may feel in a similar capacity. Like, I don't know that I can even help my kid. I don't know half of what they're doing now. Maybe it was, I didn't get that far myself, or maybe it's just that, it just didn't stick, whatever the reasons are. What do you say to a parent like that maybe just feels a lack of confidence with their ability to help their child?
Well, you shouldn't have that problem with Caddo Parish schools. That teacher resource and parent resource center, they even offer videos on different subject matters to help you teach your child. And once again, we have this wonderful thing called email now. So you have access to the teachers. If your student is not doing as well as you feel that they should be doing, and if you can't help them, communicate with the teacher and tell them, hey, we're having a problem. What can we do?
Yeah.
And that takes care of that. I remember, now that you mentioned that, I believe my son was in maybe middle school. He was going to Jones Middle School, I believe, in Middle Magnet in Hampton, Virginia. And he was doing, algebra. And I was like, okay, well, let me help you out with this algebra. So he did all of the work, all of the answers, were correct. But when he brought his paper home, he was upset because he didn't get 100% on that paper. And even though his answers were correct, he didn't get the correct answers based on the way that the teacher taught the new math. So, a lot of times you will lose the parent with that, because the parent can come up with the right answer, but it's not coming up with the way the teacher taught the student to come up with that answer. So that's one of the reasons that you want to communicate with the teachers. And if you don't get a satisfactory answer or resolution to that, then call and you request a conference with the teacher and the counselor.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that there is really no reason to not be able to support your child, especially if we're focusing in on Caddo Parish. The resources are there. What we have to do is be really communicative and help prepare our kids and help support them throughout the school year.
That is correct.
Okay. So I want to take a quick break, but here's what I want for you to think about while we're on this break.
Okay.
You mentioned that one of the kind of unique things to this area, it's not a unique thing. There are many other places that have this kind of unique situation, but unique to our area is the fact that we have a lot of transitioning families. We have military families. We have people that move for various reasons, but specifically our military families. We have a lot of movement. When we get back, I want for you to kind of talk about some of the challenges that you have seen with transitioning families and some of the things that over the years of your experiences you found to be especially helpful for that demographic. But we're going to take a quick break before you tackle that question.
Okay.
There's a commercial that used to say, "Don't leave home without it." I think it was MasterCard. And at the end, they would say, "You couldn't put a price on it. A price could not be put on what you and your wife did for me this week." And I'm just praying that your ministry will continue to be the blessing to others as it has been to me this week. Just the opening of the eyes, just seeing God's word with a whole different set of lenses, just understanding what is required of us and laying aside the misnomers, the erroneous teachings, the errors, and just accepting who I am in Christ. And no one else could tell me who I am but the Word.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for hanging out with us all week long.
Thank you for being there with us.
All right, we're back. If you are just joining us, we are having just a splendid conversation with LaSunya Phillips, educator par excellence in our area. And we have been talking about transitioning back into school, what kids can do to prepare, what parents can do to prepare. We've been talking about some of the resources that are available in this area where we are, Shreveport, Louisiana, the Caddo Parish area. And she has just been a wealth of knowledge so far. So if you're just joining us, you have missed something. I'm going to advise you to go back after we're done. I'm going to advise you to go back and watch the beginning. All right, Mother Phillips. So the question of our transitioning families.
Okay. If you can, if possible, try not to transition or move the student from one school to another until after report card time. If it's close to report card time, you don't transfer. And we have parents that do this. You don't transfer your child 2 weeks out before the end of the semester, especially if they're in high school, because you don't want their grades to fall, when they get to the new school. So what you want to do is, if you can, wait until after the 9 weeks or wait until after the semester and get those grades locked in so that it'll make it a little bit easier for the transition. Because you have to remember, sometimes, especially if you're going from one state to the next or one city to the next or however that works out, the child is going to lose time from school. Meaning that they're gonna lose instructional days.
Yeah.
So they will fall behind just from that. And then you never know if where they're going is a little ahead of them or a little behind them. So there's, some obstacles with that.
Yeah.
And you might want to see again if the school has has another student, maybe with the student council that your student could possibly pair up with or shadow or communicate with or meet to help ease them into a new school.
Yeah. I love how you talked about that, because I think it's such practical advice. And it's not necessarily something that everybody thinks about. Sometimes when you get, whether it's a call to transition or a new job or whatever the case might be, you're kind of just thinking in terms of how can we quickly make a transition and where can the child go, but we're not really thinking about those critical elements of what this is going to mean from state to state or from school district to school district and the differences between where those schools are. What would you say, are there resources for parents if they're transitioning to be able to kind of check out the school district that they're going into and to see, what level the schools are at? What's out there in terms of that?
Well, excuse me. Most of the schools that your child goes to is determined on the area that they live in. Mm-hmm. So unless they have a concrete area where if they're living at a base, of course, or transitioning to a new base and living on base, mm-hmm. then, there's a particular school that they'll be zoned for so they can start reaching out to the schools. But if you have an idea of what area, you want a lot of parents will try to move into places where they know it's a good school district. They'll
Right.
try to find housing in that area. And if that's what you plan on doing, then reach out to the school and kind of talk to them and let them know, hey, we're coming or what have you. I'd like to set up a date to tour the school. Mm-hmm. Some of our schools offer tours. Not all of them, but some of them do. And your child can come in and tour the school with the principal and a new student that way as well.
Yeah. How do parents know the markers of a good school? What should we be looking for?
Well, you want to see what grade the school got with their testing the year prior. Mm-hmm. So usually you can go online and find out a little information about the school and see what their grade was, A through, F or whatever. And if it's a pretty good school, you can just ask the principal, hey, how did you guys, what grade did you all get last school year?
Yeah. Okay. Big question. So we are all tongue-in-cheek post-COVID. Yeah. And that entire experience of, schools being closed and students being out of connection with teachers and peers and all of that was something that really impacted our students. What are some things that you have seen just in terms of where things were before COVID and where things are now? And I've got a second part to that question, but I'll leave you with that one for now. What are some things that you've seen as differences?
Socially, the students are about where they were prior to the COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. Academically, they are still lagging a little behind because, think about it. You were asking kids, I believe here in our city, the elementary students, mm-hmm. once we started back to going to school, elementary students went Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday. The middle schools and the high schools, we had A day and B day, mm-hmm. meaning that students actually went to school either Monday and Wednesday or either Tuesday and Thursday, and Friday was virtual. Right. And the days that they didn't go to school, those days they were working from home. So then we had to make sure that all of these kids had access to a computer. Mm-hmm. They had to have access to Wi-Fi and all that stuff. So that was a timely process. So they're still getting further and further behind, but yet they're getting promoted to the next school, grade, I should say. Mm-hmm. So we find that academically, they still haven't quite caught up to where they were. But socially, it's like it never happened.
It's so interesting to kind of see how that has played out, right? Mm-hmm. I know from, my own perspective being in the mental health field, one of the things that we all worried about was that you were going to see more anxiety, more depression, more of these things kind of coming up for all of us, students, parents, everybody. And I know in some places that I've been in, it's one of the things that schools have done is that they've what's the word I'm looking for? They've supported their curriculum with trauma-informed initiatives and all of that. Is that something that has been done in this area? And if not, how are our schools addressing that piece of this post-COVID era?
When we came back from the COVID pandemic, I was working at a high school. Mm-hmm. So those folks act like we never had a pandemic. They were just glad to be, with their friends. So, and then the past 2 years, I've worked at an elementary school. Mm-hmm. And the kids are, pretty much on track. I think it was, although we were afraid to enter the school year with uncertainty, mm-hmm. we were glad to be back because we needed to get back in the classroom. We needed to, get out of the house. Yeah. Of course, some of my high school students, when they were supposed to be working from home, mm-hmm. they were working at the job. Yeah. During school hours, which was not, from a state mandate, mm-hmm. that was illegal. Mm. But sometimes we would call the houses and the parents would say, well, Johnny Blow is at work right now. Can I take a message? Yeah. So, but, that's, for the most part, is in our rear view mirror as mm-hmm. far as affecting them socially. Yeah. But academically, they still suffer a little bit. Sister Rima made the comment, again, in follow up to that question, and she said that's because of the No Child Left Behind. So I'm assuming that was an initiative in this area. Right. We did have the No Child Left Behind, but, I guess you would say you'd have to improvise. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you had to, even though the student really lacked the information that they needed, you still kind of like passed them along, and hopefully they would catch up. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But the district did a lot to accommodate them as far as providing them with the laptops, providing them with Wi-Fi that the district paid for, mm-hmm. providing them with breakfast and lunch where they could come and pick it up from the school, from their regular school site. They did a lot. And of course, the federal government provided money for them for the parents to be able to buy the groceries for the meals that they may have missed if they were at school. So mm-hmm. they did as much as they could possibly do.
That's wonderful.
But at some point, which I always preach, mm-hmm. the parents have to hold their students accountable for doing their part. Mm-hmm. And the parents also need to be accountable to do their part.
Yeah. I hear kind of inherent in that is that modeling. If I do my part, that also shows my student that they have a part to play too.
They have a part to play in their own education.
Yeah, I love that. All right, Sister Phillips. So we've talked about students, we've talked about the parents. Let's talk a little bit about the teachers. We don't have a ton of time left, but how do our teachers prepare for this time, this transition back into the new school year?
Most of the time, they're excited at the beginning of the school year. It's a fresh start, a new batch of kids. They're in the classroom early, mm-hmm. trying to make preparations, getting the class set up for this new group of students. And they're getting excited for the evening that the students can come with their parents and drop off their school supplies, meet the teachers, or if they're in high school, back to school night is what it's called. So they're excited about the new school year and hoping that they have a good group each year. There's always hope that we have a good group this year.
Yeah, yeah. What keeps you passionate? What has kept you passionate as an educator?
I I think it's the mentoring aspect. I kind of miss working with the older students because I could kind of impact them a little bit more and, kind of help guide them through, and you can see the process, the process is working with them. The younger students, they kind of they're more of a touchy feely. I want to hug this, that, the others. And so I've kind of had to get adjusted to that. But I like it when we have some students, for example, when I step out my office, they're in the office for discipline reasons. And I call them into my office. I say, hey, tell me, why are you in here today? Now, when you're in here in the office, then that means that you're missing the learning in the classroom. And then I said, let's make a deal. Or when is your lunch? I'm going to come and check on you and see how your day is going. Who's your homeroom teacher? Who are your teachers? I'm going to go and talk to your teachers and see if you're having a good day or what have you. And if I get a good report, then I have something for you. So those things, I enjoy that. I enjoy watching the kids go from one level and rise to their fullest potential.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of talk, I think, especially in school systems, about the use of positive reinforcement as opposed to some of the older methods of reinforcing that we've used. What would you say about where things are from an educational perspective in terms of using positive reinforcement?
I like using positive reinforcement, but it kind of basically depends on the child. If you have a child that you don't have to talk to as much, it doesn't take a whole lot. You can say, okay, I'm going to give you this today and I'm going to send you on your way.
Yeah.
But I better not see you the rest of the week. Sometimes when we have students that they just get in trouble all the time, or they tell the teacher where they can go or something like that, and they're only in first grade, I need to see you. You need to sit down in this chair right next to me, and I want you to explain to me what you did in class. And usually they don't want to repeat themselves, but I did have one young man, he told me exactly what he said to the teacher. And I was like, wait a minute, what did you say? And then he caught himself and he wouldn't repeat it. Little first grader. And, I say, okay, this is one that I'm gonna work with this year. We're going to get it together.
Yeah, yeah. Advice. There's a young teacher out there who's just getting their start, stepping into the classroom, fresh off that graduate block or fresh off that certification. What would you tell that emerging teacher today?
What you learn in the book, it doesn't necessarily reflect what you're going to utilize in the classroom. You have to just take it from day to day and look at each challenge and see what works for your students. You're going to handle students differently because they're individuals. So you just have to kind of get your feet wet, ask for some help if you need some. If you're a new teacher, you should have a mentor or someone to help you get through your first year.
Yeah, yeah. All the way through everything you've talked about, and you heard us in the beginning where we were talking about how every conversation we have, it comes down to people. It comes down to having supports. And what I hear you saying, from teachers to students to parents, all of us need people to connect with to make this a success.
That's right. Takes a village.
Takes a village. Who are the people that you would say over the span of your career have impacted you the most?
Oh, wow. I can name one person and that's since I've been here.
Yeah.
Her name is Dr. Sandra McCullough.
Mm-hmm.
She used to be my principal when I was in high school, and I never paid her much mind because I never went to the principal's office.
Yeah.
But one day when I started working for her at the same school, I listened to her and she told me on day one, she said, let me tell you something. I am a teacher first,
Mm-hmm.
and your principal, your supervisor second. I have an open door policy. If you have any questions, or if there's something that you're not sure of, you make sure you come and see me.
Mm. What did that do for you?
It did a
Hearing
lot.
that.
It did a lot. It made me respect her a whole lot. And sometimes she would give you a little tidbit of history or something that'll make you chuckle. She retired about 3 years ago. She was in the school system like 50 or 53 years.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me that she was one of the group of ladies that established the YEP program, which is an after-school program for students to go to if their parents are working. And it was originally designed for working mothers who had to take care of their children. She said, well, I was one of the people that established that program. And I was like, really? I mean, she just had so many interesting stories to talk about. And we'll connect through text and Facebook to this day.
I love it. I love it. There's always someone or someones that impact our experiences and really help to shape us into the people that we become.
That's correct.
I love that. I love that. I was actually talking to one of my mentors today, and that was just to see where we were when I first got that inspiration to where we are now. And so it's so crucial. I have one last question for you. How quickly did we get to this time, right?
Time flew because I still had a few things on my list. But
There you see, I told you. Elder Phillips, you are a woman of faith. And I believe, and I know that you're going to verify this in just a minute, that because you're a woman of faith, that has also impacted who you are as an educator. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
well, having the faith and it teaches you to be patient.
Yeah.
It teaches you to love others and to be kind and to do what you can for other people. And working with young people and seeing them grow up to be successful, especially my children, our children.
Yeah.
And there's so many opportunities out there for them. And to know that they may not know how to take advantage of those opportunities, every chance that I get, I can explain these opportunities or share them with the students or share them with their parent. That all comes from having faith and being patient, just as Jesus and God are towards us.
Yeah.
They didn't give up on us, so we can't give up on our kids.
And okay, hashtag that. We can't give up on our kids. I love that. I love that. It has been such a pleasure talking to you. Like, I knew this was going to be a great interview because, I mean, I've known you for just a few months, Elder Phillips, but I see that passion that flows out of you when it comes to education. Just you have such a compassionate, caring spirit. And so I am so glad that we had this opportunity to jump into this area, your baby, and to talk about this tonight. Absolutely. Absolutely. And okay, we want to spin our wheel and see who won tonight. Not a lot of y'all commented, so you missed out if you didn't comment, but we're going to spin our wheel and see who our winner was tonight. If you are our winner tonight, what you want to do is head on over to www.kwministries.net/claim-your-prize. Marilyn Remo, you are our winner tonight. You know the drill, lady. Congratulations. Jump on over to www.kwministries.net/claim-your-prize. At this point, Remo, I don't know what else you can get in there, but you go right ahead and go. But get your prize tonight. Guys, next week, you have enjoyed the conversation we had tonight. Next week, we also have another wonderful guest coming your way. We're going to be talking to Lorraine Mendez, and she's going to be talking about parenting. And I know that you can't wait to hear that. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You guys have been amazing. You're always amazing, whether you're watching us live or you're watching 6 months from now. We appreciate you so much. Elder Phillips, thank you so much again for joining us. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. It has been a pleasure talking with you.
You too. Good night.
Good night. Now remember, guys, if it's Monday night, you are live with KW.